Well, good morning, everybody. I probably sound a little bit better than I did last week, but I'm still pretty sick, so I encourage you to wish me well from afar. So my prayer this morning is that you who are here and you who are watching at home hear the Lord's promise for you today, and I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So this morning we hear a little bit about an adventure that what our translation of the Bible calls wise men, following a star sent by God. Eventually that star and their adventure leads them to Emmanuel, God with us, the Messiah himself. Our holiday carols sometimes like to refer to these three wise men as three kings, but that's not what they were. I think better use of that word is wise men or astrologers. Sometimes the word is magi. They could have been priests. Another way this word is used in our Bible is magicians or sorcerers. I wonder, at least today, if we think about these adventurers, I think maybe we should think about them and consider them really just using the science of their day, and they were looking for something. They were looking for the ultimate meaning, and they ended up looking for and finding God. I also suggest that we can see ourselves in these three adventurers. You know, like the thing about these three adventurers, these three wise men, let's say, is it says they come from the east. And I'm sort of, you can't see what's going on in my brain right now. I'm sort of looking at a map of the ancient world. And if they came from our modern day Iraq and Iran, and they were coming west to Israel, that meant that they were they were certainly foreigners, right? In no way were these folks attached to the people of God or expect them to be part of the club to come and look for God, right? These folks weren't Jews. There weren't Christians yet. So yeah, this is strange, and a strange group of people to come and look for our God. Politically, they were probably there was a different empire that they lived under. So Israel lived under the Roman Empire. Whatever empire was ruling over what we'd call Persia these days, that was their empire. And Rome and that empire had lots of conflict. So they weren't just going into like a weird place. They were going into a place that could have been really hostile to them. And obviously, as they're sort of trying to make their way through this adventure, not everybody is their allies. We hear in the reading today, we hear about the scribes and things like that, and Herod, and so we get a sense of sort of all the enemies of God. I think last week we heard about Herod sort of persecuting and looking for the child Jesus to kill him. So we know, at least this week, that Herod isn't a friend to this baby. This sort of adventure and sort of their alien experience sort of reminded me of a recent trip that I took. My daughter, as you know, maybe a lot of you know, is a senior, and she's figuring out where she's going to go to school. One of the schools that she's looking at and is considering her, there's a couple in New York. And we had a chance to go out there to New York to visit the school, and actually for me it was really like, let's go talk to financial aid to see how we could pay for this kid. And we sort of had a quick overnight there, and we just came back yesterday. And I'll tell you, at least for me, that was sort of a really alien experience. Let's go to the next slide here. I knew I was in a strange place. I don't know if you can see this. I mean, I recognize the Best Buy and the Nordstrom rack, but this building was counting. And so I know I just got it at one, whatever that number is, and it's 13 at the end there. But it was just going up and up and up and up and up. And I'm like, why is this building counting? And so if anybody why this building is counting, can you tell me after church? Because I just didn't have any idea. I asked people. Unlike these adventures, I actually have a friend that lives in New York, and I asked her, and she was like, I forgot. This is weird. We don't have buildings counting here in Wisconsin. Certainly not in Lake Mills, not in my part of town in Madison. This was just really weird. Imagine I felt a little bit of dislocation, but at least I spoke the language. At least I could recognize some of our brands, right? At least I know where New York City is on the map. I knew where I was going. We were sort of on a trip and adventure, and we were looking for something. Some other things I saw that was really weird. If you go to the next slide, I don't know, like this. Oh, it's the national debt? Okay. I'm going to pretend in second service and on Wednesday that I don't know what it is. All right. Nobody says anything. No. That's the national debt. Well, that's deep. Okay. Apparently Superman's grave, his sarcophagus? I don't know, like skateboard. At least I could recognize that this was Superman. But it is dangerous. It was actually in the Museum of Modern Art, and this guy, this artist who was doing these photos, he just had this, I don't understand, he was just crawling everywhere. My daughter was in a rush, I didn't get a chance to totally take in the thing. But lots of strange things. You know, these adventurers, when they went to Jerusalem, they probably appreciated some of the architecture. We can go to the next slide. This is a photo far off of Grand Central Station. If you go inside Grand Central Station, it was, again, really interesting. There was also, because of what had occurred last week, there was plenty of armed folks with, military folks with automatic rifles. But they probably appreciated some of the architecture. In fact, King Herod was really big on doing big building projects and big architectural projects. Had done a lot of renovation. That's how Herod was trying to justify his rule beyond just having the biggest army and being a friend or client of Rome. Built a lot of stuff. And so, you know, you could spend a very amount of time in New York sort of marveling at all these human structures, right? And I bet they looked and they appreciated, oh, this is different and this is interesting. Herod even, you probably know this, or maybe you don't, Herod had even rebuilt the temple, like the big temple, and had really expanded that complex. I was looking for an analogy here. If we go to the next slide, this is a little bit of a far-off photo of Times Square. In fact, the three wise men probably couldn't have gone into the deep, all the way into the temple, but maybe they could have been on the outer sides. This is us from far away from Times Square. This really is our temple, synagogue, mosque, high altar, or high place altar, or really church, we could call it, of commerce in America. This is a place where people really come and spend their time and in some ways worship, at least with their money. And I think while I was near Times Square, I even found an image of the God that is worshipped here. We can go to the next slide. I think this here is their deity. Obviously, our wise men, if they did go to the temple in any way, shape, or form, did not encounter God there, right? We can go to the next slide. Some other things, and I don't have photos of this because it would have been exploitative, but I noticed the poverty, and we have poverty everywhere, and it looks really different, but in New York, at least for me, when I was in Manhattan, it looked a lot different. There were just so many folks that seemed to have been driven insane by their poverty, or maybe the demons that were in them had really, that sort of gave them that mental illness, had driven them to poverty. I don't know which. Some are like our version of our Gerasene demoniacs. We have stories in our Bible about demons possessing people and them really being alienated. And I think since we know in 30 years within this story or so after the birth of Jesus is going to go around. He's going to be saving a lot of people from these demons and from this separation and hopefully from some of this poverty. And I'm guessing that these wise men would have encountered, these adventurers would have encountered their own versions of this, and a different version of this than when they were in their homeland. The question really is, what were these three adventurers looking for? I kept asking my daughter this because I knew I was going to be preaching on this text, and I thought it would be cute to share with you all the deep things that she would have to say. A lot of it was, I don't want to live in a dorm. I'm hungry. So I'm not going to include any of that in the sermon this morning. I did tell her I wasn't even going to mention her. Alas, she's not here to stop me. But what's interesting is, and I think for us as Christians, as people, whether we come to church or we are in this church or you're watching at home or anywhere, we are in this life, we are like these adventurers and we are searching. Right? I think we're searching for the big meaning. And as much as that trip to New York is about like hey, which schools should you go to? Are you going to even go to school in New York? It's really about, I think for me, at least for my daughter, I think it was like, who am I going to be as I grow up here? What am I going to do in the next stage? And how am I going to develop? And what am I looking for? I think for me, there was certainly some of that. There was also like, hey, let me take a road trip in some ways with my eldest kid, and maybe we'll have some grand bonding experience, and then it's happily ever after or something like in a movie. It turned out, though, at least for us, for our adventure, a lot of those deeper things got subsumed by like really practical things. I think again, this conversation with financial aid became a little more important than is my daughter perfectly happy in the moment. Can we get travel around on these train system and make that work out a little more? Became a little more practical concern and get to the airport to and from in time. Make sure I could come here and give this sermon here this morning. Then did we have a chance to find the perfect school for you? What's interesting, I think, so again, like I said, like we are these magi, and we are these people, these adventurers, and we're going and we're looking for things. And these adventurers, they find that thing. They find that ultimate meaning. They find God. And the question is not just what are you looking for, because I think we find this. I think we encounter God out there. And I want you to maybe think about that. Where have you encountered God in life, whether it's here in church or out in the world? And what do you do? How do you respond? How do you react to that? These strangers who are just as strangers, they're strangers in the world they went into, just as I think we are strangers in this world. I mean, imagine, folks, as Christians, we confess that Christ is Lord, Christ is our King, in a country that doesn't like kings. We quit kings. We had a whole revolution about this thing, right? That is just one way that we're strange, we're different, a little bit of an immigrant people, as Brad and I were talking a little bit about this morning. So again, when we encounter the divine, whether we can encounter it here, whether we encounter it through our sacraments, we encounter it in the world, how do we respond? Well, I think the thing that these wise men are famous for are the three gifts, right? The gold, which is like a kingly gift, and the frankincense and myrrh, which are like religious and spiritual connotations. The gifts they give, look, they gave these gifts, and what gifts can we give to God? But that's not even what happens first in the story. That's not what we're asked to do. What happens first is that these three wise people, these three adventurers, worship. They pay homage. They say thank you. Let me just say that again. All they do is give homage. They say thank you, and they worship God. And then they choose to give gifts, maybe in gratitude for this gift of the Messiah, of God, of the grace that God has given. They're saying, hey, here are some resources for the world. In our country, often a gift, if you give somebody a gift, sometimes there is an expectation of reciprocation here, right? In some ways, us traveling to New York, then go and have a hard conversation with financial aid about the financial support they were offering my daughter was, hey, here's the gift of me flying across the country to come and have a conversation with you. We are serious. Now, are you serious? What other times can you think about when you give gifts and it's like, I'm giving this gift, I'm going to buy you this drink, I'm going to buy you this thing. And there is a reciprocation. That's how society works, right? But that's not what these wise men do. They don't give the gift in the sense of trying to control God. The gift shows up as sort of their ministry. As they've already received this grace, they've already encountered God in the real world. And then they say, here's how I can contribute to that. But they don't have to. Notice how other folks respond as they sort of know. Like Herod now has an idea where God on earth is. So do all these priests and scribes. Do they even go? They don't even go. So that's how they respond to the gift. They don't even go to look. And Herod again is going to go and respond in hopes to kill this king, and not really homage, just sort of being deceptive. That's what's interesting to me. That's what's exciting to me. And I think that is both that promise that here is this gift of God, and then the challenge that we have as adventurers in this world. When you encounter God, what do? Are you trying to do something, give something back? Are you willing to just surrender and say thank you and pay homage and worship? That's a question for you this morning. Amen.